In the past, I've done a top 10 list of my favorite visual novel developers, but what if we took that topic in a more specific direction? Many developers work with different scenario writers who don't always stay with one company since they're often freelancers. In many cases, these scenario writers are even more notable than the developers themselves. In this video, I'm going to talk about my personal top 10 favorite visual novel scenario writers. I am only going to include writers where I read at least 2 of their VNs in full, where the VNs were at least mostly, if not fully, written by that writer. Bonus points if they've written multiple different IPs or series that I like. When I think of a visual novel writer I both love and have very mixed feelings about, Yukito Urushibara immediately comes to mind. He's known for the Irotoridori series, Sakuramoyu, and Perennial Dusk Kensenka. The biggest reason I have Yukito on this list is his strength in his emotional storytelling, especially through flashbacks. I think he's a master of using backstory to build attachment to the character before delivering some of, if not arguably, the biggest emotional payoffs I've seen in any Nakige VN. His flashbacks are often psychologically darker than your typical Nakige, but they make the eventual character arcs hit that much harder. Irotoridori no Sekai is a great example. Kana's route uses multiple flashbacks to build both her character and the story's themes, leading to a very impactful ending. Even in Perennial Dusk Kensenka, a VN I'm kinda mixed on overall, the opening flashback and climax with Nobody is easily the strongest part of the VN and does a great job establishing emotional investment with her specifically. Another defining trait of Yukito's writing is the use of reincarnation and alternate worlds. Nearly all of his works play with these ideas, creating complex, interconnected settings. At their best, like in Irotoridori no Hikari, this leads to memorable twists and strong themes of emotional redemption across multiple routes. That said, most of my issues with Urushibara comes from everything surrounding these strong emotional points. His humor writing style is inconsistent at best and has gotten weaker over time, and his prose is consistently criticized for going heavy on repetition, especially in later works like Sakuramoyu and Kensenka, where certain thematic catchphrases or even just simple narration gets reiterated to the point of low-key treating the reader like they have huge short-term memory issues. His stories can also become overly complex, sometimes hurting the pacing and making the journey feel more exhausting than engaging. Ultimately, I describe Urushibara as a flawed masterpiece scenario writer. He's currently my favorite pure Nakige writer, with his use of engaging flashbacks and his emotional climaxes specifically make an argument for the best in the medium, but getting there can be a struggle. If he refined his pacing, cut down on repetition, and made his humor less cringe, he'd easily rank much higher for me. Some people might be surprised to see Kinoko Nasu this low, but considering Fate Stay Night was the first visual novel I ever read, it wouldn't feel right to leave him off entirely. In addition to Fate, he's also done the Tsukihime and Witch on the Holy Night visual novels. What makes Nasu stand out is his approach to fantasy world building. A lot of urban fantasy VNs lean too much on the urban or fantasy extremes, but Nasu strikes a strong balance between the two. His worlds feel detailed and expansive, while still staying grounded through character-driven storytelling. That balance is something I think other writers sometimes miss. For example, Dies Irae leaned so heavily into style and philosophy that it felt like it prioritized being cool and edgy over building a compelling world or cast. Nasu, by contrast, has a much more well built out character motivations in addition to all the cool character designs and fight scenes. From the only 2 VNs I read from Nasu, aka the original Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night, he also does a great job with his protagonists and all the main heroines. Every route I read in both Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night have heroine routes where the main heroine tied to the route, and even many of the side characters have a lot of great character depth. That said, his strengths do come with trade-offs. His stories can feel a bit slow at times due to dense narration and heavy exposition, and while his action scenes are ambitious, they don't always translate perfectly into the visual novel format, due to the medium's common usage of still CGs to simulate action. Notice how I said I only read the original Tsukihime and Fate Stay Night. While I'm kinda interested in Mahoyo, I've heard mixed enough things about it that I haven't pushed it up my radar. As much as I'd love to read Tsukihime Blue Glass Moon, I'm still waiting for that to get on Steam and for Red Garden to release in Japan. I was kind of sort of interested in Kagetsu Toyo and Hollow Ataraxia, but honestly, as sequels/fan discs, their premises didn't particularly interest me. Even with all that, it's hard to overlook Nasu's impact. His mix of strong characters and detailed magical systems is exactly what made Tsukihime and Fate so memorable, and why those series have continued to thrive through so many adaptations and spin-offs. Suzuka Miya, the writer behind the Kara no Shoujo series, is someone I think doesn't get talked about enough. When people bring up mystery visual novel writers, names like Kotaro Uchikoshi or Ryukishi07 usually come up, but honestly, I think Suzuka Miya is the best pure mystery writer in the medium. A lot of mystery visual novels have great ideas and fun stories, but stumble in execution. They either suffer from slow, repetitive pacing issues, Ryukishi 07, or end in ways that feel overly convoluted or unsatisfying, Uchikoshi. The Kara no Shoujo series mostly avoids both problems. Each entry tells a strong, self-contained mystery, but by the end of the series, all three connect into a larger narrative, with endings that feel both conclusive and emotionally meaningful. Even though it took over a decade to complete the trilogy, it was definitely worth it. While the third game might be a slight step down in terms of mystery, it instead delivers a strong emotional payoff and properly concludes long-running character arcs. One of Miya's biggest strengths to me is the character writing, including all the antagonists. Across the series, even the most disturbing villains are given enough depth and backstory to feel understandable without being excused. The broader cast is also handled very well, with both recurring and one-off characters leaving a lasting impression. That said, this series isn't without flaws. The first two games, especially the original, include some poorly integrated H scenes, often in awkward or unnecessary places like bad endings. There are some occasional pacing dips, like the super long flashback in KNS2, that could have easily been trimmed down in half. Another limitation is, well, outside of Konno Shoujo, Suzuka Miya hasn't really written much, which makes it harder to rank higher despite how strong the series is. Still, the consistency of Konno Shoujo, both as individual psychological horror thriller mysteries and as a complete trilogy, is something most mystery VNs struggle to achieve. For me, that alone is enough to put Suzuka Miya in my top 10 VN writers overall, and my favorite writer purely when it comes to mystery-focused writing. It's honestly a shame that Looseboy hasn't written anything in over a decade, because he was one of the standout visual novel writers of the 2000s. He's best known for Shara no Kuni and Jisenjo no Mao, both hugely popular in Japan and relatively well known in the West. What makes Looseboy stand out to me is his decent pacing and his ability to write dark psychological thrillers without relying on excessive edge. Compared to other similar writers, his stories feel more grounded and focused, without getting dragged down by unnecessary shock value, Gen Urobuchi, or weird philosophical and sexual overindulgence, sca-ji. Looseboy's structure is also very effective. He typically starts with a chapter 1 that's basically a relatively short but sweet common route, then quickly transitions into heavier character-driven arcs in future chapters. I'd say his early to mid-game is especially strong. Sachi's route in Shara no Kuni and Tsubaki's in Jisenjo no Mao are standout examples of negative character development done extremely well, with Sachi's in particular being one of my favorite arcs in any visual novel. He also delivers strong emotional endings, whether it's the resolution of the central conflict in Shara no Kuni or the more tragic elements of Jisen. His conclusions tend to leave a lasting impact. While his early major character arcs and endings are excellent, his mid to late game sections can be inconsistent. Chapters 3 and 4 of Jisenjo, and especially chapters 4 and 5 of Shara no Kuni, were a lot less interesting to me than what came before, besides their endings. There's also the controversy of the debate of who the true villain of Jisenjo no Mao was. Outside of his two major works that I've been talking about, his other track record is also quite a bit weaker, apparently. His earliest translated title, A Profile, just looked like a lesser version of Shara no Kuni, so I never read it, and his final visual novel, Boku no Hitori Senso, was reportedly so poorly received that it likely contributed to Looseboy never writing for visual novels anymore. Even with those flaws, Looseboy's strengths are hard to ignore. His ability to hook readers early, deliver powerful psychological but relatable character arcs, and ending his VNs on a strong emotional note makes his visual novels some of the most memorable in the medium. Most people probably haven't even heard of Nakura Reiji, or might be surprised to even see him on here. He's only written 3 visual novels. Deardrops is Fandisk D2B vs Deardrops, and Bokuten Why I Became an Angel. But all 3 of them rank among my personal top favorite VNs, which is why he stands out to me. What's interesting is how different his works feel, despite all being written for developer Overdrive. Deardrops is a lighthearted band-themed rom-com with strong group chemistry and plenty of fun moments, while Bokuten goes in the complete opposite direction, as a heavy utsuge focused on the darker, more bittersweet sides of love and romance. Despite that contrast, both are effective emotionally. Deardrops for me works due to its balance of slice-of-life, comedy, and romance, with just enough serious moments to give the story weight, all while keeping a strong focus on the band dynamic. It's currently my personal favorite band-themed VN to date, but I haven't read Limelight Lemonade Jam yet. Its Fandisk D2B vs Deardrops is also surprisingly strong, as it not only delivers fun crossover interactions with Kirakira's cast, but at least to me, gives a much more satisfying sense of closure to Kirakira's true ending. Bokuten is where his writing really stands out to me. Its chapter-based common route explores multiple relationships in a grounded, mildly pessimistic tone, showing that love isn't always ideal or clean. This creates my personal favorite common route in all of visual novels, especially since the protagonist's choices actually have a lot of agency in how the common routes' couples' relationships turn out. While the heroine routes are more hit or miss, they still tackle interesting themes that most romance VNs tend to avoid. That said, Nakura Reiji seems to like making route inconsistency issues, like how Yayoi and Rimu have way too short routes compared to Riho and Kanade and Deerdrops. Meanwhile, in Bokuten, while I like 3 of the 4 heroine routes just fine, especially the true route, the one route I don't like has one of the worst plot twists I've ever seen, which I just cannot excuse, especially since it's required to read this route in order to get the true route unlocked. It's also unfortunate that Bokuten's apparent poor sales in Japan contributed to Overdrive's eventual closure, because that stretch from Deerdrops to Bokuten just feels like the developer when it was at their best. Even so, Nakura Reiji's strength in character writing and emotional storytelling makes him incredibly underrated to me. If he had a larger catalog or continued writing for a developer not for Overdrive, he'd likely rank much higher for me, because I just really like his focus on unique, memorable character writing, whether in more lighthearted or depressing stories. When it comes to pure, wholesome slice-of-life writing, Konno Asta is easily one of the best. A lot of moege writing tends to fall into 2 extremes, either being too overly comedy-heavy or too overly slow-paced wholesome. Konno Asta's works strike a great balance between comfy slice-of-life, engaging character development, solid comedy, and just enough drama to stay interesting. Admittedly, most of my praise comes from the If My Heart Had Wings and Sky Full of Stars trilogies, which are 2 of my favorite moege series ever. Both have strong common routes built around unique club settings, gliding and stargazing respectively, that feel surprisingly engaging, even if those topics don't exactly sound exciting at first. They also do a great job establishing group dynamics and making all the main heroines memorable. Where his writing really shines is his heroine routes that he personally worked on. As a reminder, both Konosora and Miyazora have multiple writers for the heroine routes. In If My Heart Had Wings, Kotori and Amane's routes stand out for their mix of heartfelt romance and meaningful emotional drama. Kotori's story in particular uses her disability in a way that ties beautifully into the game's central theme of spreading your wings to fly high into the sky, while Amane's route gives a great backstory into the glider club itself, complete with an excellent ending. The original A Sky Full of Stars admittedly is a bit more uneven. The childhood friend dynamic between Akito, Hikari, and Saya is well developed, especially with the use of flashbacks in the common route, but the melodrama in the heroine routes can feel overly drawn out and frustrating at times. Thankfully, Hikari's route is saved by a strong emotional ending that fully utilizes the stargazing theme. The fandiscs are where things really come together for me. Fine Days uses its traditional fandisc style to take advantage of Konno Asta's wholesome writing style, removing the lame melodrama while delivering emotional enough after stories. Interstellar Focus is my personal favorite fandisc of all time, making a threesome relationship actually thought out and fitting of the childhood friend trio, and actually giving a good emotional send-off to the rest of the cast. Outside of those series though, his other VNs haven't hit as consistently. Autry My Dear Moments, at least based on the anime adaptation, was pretty okay. Adventure of a Lifetime is something I started but haven't gotten motivated to finish, and I haven't even started Summer Rain or Ginka. Thankfully, at his best, Konno Asta delivers some of the most memorable characters and emotionally satisfying moments in wholesome romance moege visual novels. Even if the rest of his VNs are just okay, he'll always be one of my favorites due to the impact the Konosora and Miyazora series had on me. Takahiro, best known as the writer for the Majikoi series, just barely misses my top 3, but the only reason he's this high is almost entirely because Majikoi is my favorite visual novel series of all time. Even though he's largely stuck to writing one series for over a decade, the sheer consistency is impressive. Across over 50 routes, he maintains a strong balance of comedy, character writing, and action, while creating one of the most memorable character casts in the medium. I particularly love the Kazama family, aka the main friend group and lifeblood of the series for me. Each character is fun on their own individually, but they really shine together as a group. Takahiro's humor is also another standout. It's not always laugh out loud like some moege writers, but it's consistently entertaining, and the character quirks somehow stay fresh even after multiple games. That level of consistency is hard to pull off, especially across so many entries. He's also one of the few VN writers whose action scenes I actually enjoy. His fights are quick, punchy, and often mixed with humor and punchlines, which makes them far more engaging than the slower, dragged out, and more awkwardly presented action scenes you see in a lot of other VNs. Machikoi also excels at portraying friendship in a grounded, believable way. This applies not only to the Kazuma family as mentioned earlier, but includes the many smaller friendships and other groups throughout the series, helping me endear myself more to these various side characters. That said, sticking so closely to Machikoi is both a strength and a weakness. While the series remained enjoyable, by the time I read A3, even I felt Takahiro probably should have started retiring the series. There are also some elements that haven't aged well, particularly a few certain routes that rely on uncomfortable or poorly handled scenarios, which can make certain parts of the series harder to recommend. Outside of Machikoi, his track record is harder to prove. Kimiaru and Wagahime are untranslated but seem good, and Kurakami-sama's Feast, while actually translated, looks incredibly boring and generic to the point I and many others forget it even exists. There were rumors he was secretly the writer to the Destiny Star Girlfriend trilogy, which I do like a lot, but have no definitive proof he was the writer for it. Still, it's hard to ignore what Takahiro accomplished. Maintaining a level of character quality, humor, and fun route ideas and quality across so many entries is rare. So Takahiro is this high mostly just because the one series he did well, he did really well. Kazuki Fumi is one of the more underrated visual novel writers in my opinion, with works across multiple studios, including 99 for Palette, Nanairo Reincarnation and Kimagure Temptation for Silky's Plus, Shiori's Death Diary for Laplacian, and my personal favorite, Criminal Border for Purple Soft. Despite jumping between companies and IPs, his style stays very consistent. Good pacing for story VNs, interesting supernatural mysteries, and memorable psychological dark character writing. What particularly stands out to me is how naturally he blends urban fantasy with mystery. Urban fantasy VNs tend to lean too far to either the urban part or the fantasy part. Kazuki Fumi, on the other hand, introduces supernatural elements early and ties them directly into the core plot. The 9-9 series is a great example, as it has a magic system established from the start, and every major twist builds on it across all 4 episodes. That approach helps make the plot twists feel more organic, especially compared to stories that introduce supernatural elements way too late. Looking at you, Deus Ex Machina Key Magic. He leans even further into this style with Nanairo Reincarnation, Kimagure Temptation, and Shiori's Death Diary, which I like to call these his Ghost Mystery Trilogy. These are more compact, mostly linear stories where you actively uncover the mystery, whether through episodic arcs or light investigation mechanics. Even with the ghost settings, the character writing is surprisingly grounded, with all the ghost characters having ties to relatable psychological issues many young adults could have in real life. Nothing feels like it exists just for spectacle or lazy emotional payoff, but even when he pulls back on fantasy, like in Criminal Border, his writing style very much still works. The story stays very grounded, using its central concept, aka the accidental digital drug, mainly as a tool to develop characters, antagonists included, and build a strong found family dynamic among the main group. It's also his best example of his strong pacing, hooking you quickly with a unique premise and keeping things moving. That said, his pacing can sometimes work against him. Shiori's Death Diary occasionally gets slowed down due to its heavy map selection structure, while 9-9 can suffer from tonal clashes between moege rom-com and its mystery thriller elements. On the other hand, Kimagure Temptation and Criminal Border had some major developments that felt like they could have used more time and built up to fully land emotionally. His humor is also a little bit hit or miss for me. Well, I guess I just don't really like when he does gremlin humor like Io from Nanairo Reincarnation, and I'm apparently one of the few people who never thought Sora from 9-9 was that funny, since she seems to be the super fan favorite. I'm also mixed on how he handles H scenes. He does tend to try to tie them into the plot, but they're a bit too frequent, kind of silly, and can show up as early as the first hour of each VN, which can kind of break immersion since I tend to skip most H scenes. But even with those flaws, his consistency across so many studios is impressive. Whether he's working on a full VN all on his own, or contributing to routes in multi-writer titles like newer Ubisoft VNs, his style is easy to recognize, with his great mix of consistently good story pacing, psychological character writing, and mystery thriller elements. I am very interested to see whatever he does next. While I like a lot of moege writers, the one that I decided to choose as my overall favorite is Yuu Hayase. What sets him apart is his consistency across multiple companies, including SME, Sumire, and even Azabashi Soft. while still delivering his same core strengths. Genuinely funny comedy and wholesome, satisfying romance. He's one of the few writers who can consistently make me laugh out loud while still nailing the kind of comfy rom-com storytelling I enjoy. Making Lovers is the best example of this. Its absurd slapstick-style humor stands out even within moege, but it also balances that with grounded romance by having couples get together early and focusing on their day-to-day lives. The adult cast and workplace settings also help it feel more refreshing compared to typical high school-focused stories. His other major works for SME like Fururaba, Loverable, and Harem Kingdom also play to Yuu Hayase's strengths. Even if the settings aren't as strong as Making Lovers, they still deliver that same mix of humor and feel-good romance that defines his style. What really elevates him for me though, is he's able to replicate his style outside of SME. In his only work for Sumire, Chihiro Himikai Always Walks Away, he is literally the only scenario writer to do a well-done friends with benefits romance scenario really well, especially when titles like If My Heart Had Wings, Under One Wing, and Marshmallow All the Way Home did friends with benefits routes horribly. The icing on the cake is Chihiro Himikai is also an adult age setting like Making Lovers. Not as comedy heavy, but still very chill and fun to read. Amanatsu is where things get a little bit more mixed. His writing style doesn't fully mesh with Azarashi Soft's slower, more uneventful pacing, and I think the bro side characters are not funny at all in this title. That said, Amanatsu was worth it for me since he helped create Kogane, one of my personal favorite Genki girl heroines, so even if the rest of the VN was hit or miss, it's still nice that even in the 2020s, Yuu Hayase can still write very memorable heroines both in a comedic and even wholesome way. That's really the most consistent thing about Yuu Hayase for me. His heroines. Across all his works, he's created some of my personal favorites, and he has a knack of making each one feel distinct and memorable. It's unfortunate that he stepped away from SME in recent years, but as long as he continues writing, he'll be someone I keep following. His ability to consistently deliver both strong comedy and likable characters with comfy romance is rare in the moege space. Choosing a favorite scenario writer was tough for me, but at least for this video, Mikage takes the top spot. He's written multiple unique IPs between a few developers, and I at least like all of them, with a few of his VNs ranking among my all-time favorites. He started off doing certain routes and chapters for titles like Dakapo 1, F A Fairy Tale of the Two, and Subipada, and is now best known for his work at Purplesoft with titles like Chrono Clock, Amatsutsumi, Aoitori, and Kunado Chronicles. What makes him stand out to me isn't that he specializes in one thing, but that he's good to great at combining multiple aspects and genres of visual novels I like together into individual stories. He writes likable, memorable characters, balances comedy and drama well, uses creative supernatural or conceptual gimmicks, and maintains solid pacing. His stories usually build towards emotional payoffs while staying grounded in character development. Amatsutsumi is the best example of his strengths. Its central concept, the Kotodama, a power that lets the protagonist compel others through words, starts off with silly, small uses of it, but gradually escalates into more serious consequences. The ladder structure works well here, with each arc building towards the standout true route, which combines mystery and emotional payoff effectively. Going into an earlier work of his, F the Ladder Tale, has the Renji and Chihiro chapter show his ability to turn a simple premise of a girl with an eye patch and memory issues into something emotionally impactful through strong character writing and introspection. The Yuko flashback chapter is pretty well done too. Going back to Purplesoft, I quite like all Mikage's unique IPs in different ways. Chrono Clock uses a 5-minute time rewind mechanic for memorable comedy and romance. Aoitori experiments more with tone, blending moege humor with nakage moments and darker horror-like themes. Kunado Chronicles leans more into world building, showing his ability to handle non-modern settings while still having memorable character development. That said, he's not without flaws, with the main one is that his route quality can be inconsistent. Aoitori, while a fun ride overall, never quite reaches the emotional highs of Mary's prologue arc. Chrono Clock struggles to fully deliver on its time travel gimmick outside of the common route. While I personally like all the main chapters of Amatsutsumi's main story, its side routes were a bit lacking in comparison. Kunado Chronicles heavily peaked in Chapter 2, aka Yuri's chapter, and even her side route, but every other chapter after had good ideas but just didn't have quite the emotional resonance I wanted. Still, what keeps him at number 1 for me is that balance of genres I brought up earlier. He may not always hit the same peak as more specialized writers, but he consistently delivers across multiple areas that I like. Memorable character arcs, unique settings and gimmicks, very solid story pacing, and emotional driven storytelling, while keeping each work distinct and without any undeserved deus ex machinas. That versatility, combined with a strong overall track record, is what makes Mikage my personal favorite visual novel scenario writer. I heavily look forward to Moon Ghost and any other future Purplesoft work from him, and that wraps up my top 10 visual novel scenario writers list. There were a handful I was tempted to throw in, but I don't believe in honorable mentions sections, so this list is ultimately how I feel, at least as of 2026. What are your thoughts on my favorite visual novel scenario writers, and what are some of your favorites? Feel free to leave a comment below.